So if there is one bait I got to choose for the rest of my angling, it would be pellets. We have two types of pellets pretty much available in this country. There are a couple of other options, but it is a Coppens variety or a Screttins variety. If I don't have that float dotted to beyond belief at this time of year, I'm going to miss out on a percentage. So all these little 1% things, it's about stacking the odds in my favour of having a good start. So if there is one bait I got to choose for the rest of my angling, it would be pellets. It is so simple, so versatile. For me, it is the bait I have more confidence in than pretty much any other. But in these days of so many different baits available, so many different ways of doing things, it is a minefield in getting it right. So now that we're just leading to the autumn, for me, this is perfect pellet time, when the versatility of pellets come into fishing more than ever, in that I'm needing them to target silvers, I'm needing them to target F1s, carp, all a mixture of species within one day, instead of being really selective like I might be in the summer months where I'm just fishing one standard hard pellet for everything. Now things change massively. So that is what today's video is going to be all about, my real in-depth sneaky little tips that I do with pellets that hopefully just make you that 1% better when it comes to your pellet fishing. So I'm going to show you now exactly what I mean when it comes to choosing the right pellet for the job. So first things first, and negotiating the minefield that is choosing the right pellets, because even for me these days, the amount of different varieties on the market in terms of bait companies, fishery pellets, whatever, excuse me, it is frightening and so difficult to choose the right pellet for the right job, that I'm going to emphasize very much is important now, this time of year, autumn, just leading into winter. You need the right pellets for the certain species, because it simply amazes me traveling different venues up and down the country how I'll go to one venue and Skimmers will eat a certain type of pellet. I'll go to another venue and Carp will eat. It's so crazy how things change. And what you need to understand is what pellets are best for doing certain things, because you can break it down fairly simple when it comes to it. Ultimately, when it comes to pellets, you want either a pellet you can soften or a pellet you can fish in hard form. I mean, all pellets, of course, can be fished in hard form, straight in a band, and they'll do the job. Whether they perform really well, though, all depends on what type of pellet. So I'm going to break things down. We have two types of pellets pretty much available in this country. There are a couple of other options, but it is a Coppens variety or a Screttins variety. Loosely, they're the two pellets that you're going to get. And what they give you is Screttins pellets. For me, they're the most versatile pellet. I mean, I've spoke about this in many videos before. A Screttins pellet is the pellets that you can soften the best. I mean, in terms of micro pellets, Screttins style are fin perfect ones, Sonia baked ones, they're Screttins style pellets. The micro pellets that you can soften, and they go all into lovely individual pellets. Yeah, the most important thing for me when doing micros is that they can do that. Yeah, I don't want to wet them, drain them off so they don't break down. If they break down, feed ground bait, because it's all you're doing anyway. I want a pellet that doesn't break down. So with most of these type pellets, definitely our fin perfect ones, I can cover them in water and I can create a pellet that stays as a pellet, because that's what I want to feed. I don't want the fish eating other things. I don't want them getting preoccupied by ground bait unless I want to feed ground bait. So that's the first thing to choose, is the right pellet for that. If you use a Coppens pellet that you may find in some fishery pellets and micros, you find that they're very sticky, very claggy, and they will break down. Try not to use them. The water test for your micro pellets is what determines what's what. Moving on to bigger pellets, however, in today's case, let's talk about 4 mils. I've got some 6 mils there, but 4 mil pellets in this case, again, Coppens and Screttins are available. You find that Coppens are the really uniform, solid barrel pellets. Yeah, my absolute favourite when fishing for carp on the bottom, when fishing any hard pellet on the bottom, fishing shallow, these are the best pellets for the job. Yeah, they're not necessarily the most, they don't eat them as much. Yeah, they don't carry on eating Coppens, it seems to be, through the winter. Probably because they're such a dense pellet and they take such a long time to break down, they're not the best for almost now once it gets a bit cooler, and they're not as versatile as well in terms of what species actually eat them. It's incredible with pellets like these, the Coppens in particular, that using them at venues such as Hayfield in particular, you can use a Coppens pellet, you'll almost never catch a skimmer. There's millions of them in there. But if you were to put an expander pellet on, or fish scretins pellets, when they had some scretins fishery pellets there, you catch a skimmer a chuck, and it proper emphasises that certain fish want certain pellets. So the Coppens pellets for me, you know what I mean, this Coppens style, same as our hard pellets, Coppens style pellets, they're the ones I want for later in my session when carp are feeding, there's lots of fish in the peg, and I'm not worried about overfeeding the fish, filling them up too quickly. So I save my Coppens pellets for when it's really good, or when I'm feeding a very tiny amount of bait and setting traps. Scretins pellets, however, see these are some fishery pellets I got from, I don't know, I'm not sure where I got them, but they're fishery pellets from wherever, and they are scretin style pellets. They're 4mm scretins straight out of a sack. These are the ones that are far more versatile, and what I tend to move towards in the colder months now, when I want to catch different fish, when I want to catch skimmers, when I want my peg to work really quickly, and I'm almost not scared to feed them because I know they're going to break down a little bit quicker or soften up a bit quicker so the fish can eat more of them. These are the pellets I want to switch to now. So I start using them more, identifying them. They're a little bit more bitty, a bit less uniform, a little bit more porous. You tend to find them, and again, the soak test, if you were to soak them, you end up with a beautiful pellet that you can actually put on your hook if you're really, really lucky, but a little bit more on that later. So once your pellets are identified, really simple. I say to break it down without waffling too much, try and keep your Coppens style, really hard pellets to a minimum once we get to this time of year now. Use them on the hook, great, just don't feed too many of them, be too aggressive with them early in the session, because you're going to fill your peg full of bait, you're going to struggle to catch the fish that are there early on. And your scretins pellets, as I said, exactly as we're going to do today, potentially use them, if you're allowed, obviously fishery pellets dictate what we can use, but use your scretins, your soft baits, your more palatable baits for early in the session. Now, when it's a bit trickier first thing in the morning, using baits like that is going to give you a far better start to the day and just ensure you catch fish a little bit quicker and don't fill them up quite as much. So, enough waffling about bait. I feel like I've almost confused myself there. What I want to do now is move over to my box, and I'm going to go through almost the two scenarios with you. I'm going to go through exactly how I want to set my rigs up for fishing soft pellets, the initial start of a session, and then I'm going to swap it completely and put some hard pellets in and show you how I do things a little bit different with a few little sneaky tips along the way. So let's get back to the box. So bait all prepped, all ready to go. I want to talk about some rigs first. As I say, I'm going to break this down into almost two separate videos nearly. A first section all about starting my peg off with soft pellets, making sure I get bites and I understand what's going on to my peg and the little things I do to make that happen. So I'm going to go straight into riggy bit before I plumb up and before I put any bait in. And it's geared everything to do with pellets. Whenever you're fishing them in this form, in soft pellets, when you're laying a trap on the bottom, everything for me is about bite magnification, stability, keeping my bait where I want it. Yeah, you need to forget about any nice foley through the water rigs, all of that whatnot. Your bait's never doing that. I mean, you're not loose feeding, you're not making anything happen. You are literally setting a trap. That's the mentality that you need whenever you're fishing soft pellets on the bottom, because there's no other way of doing it. I mean, it's too of a fragile method with the hook baits that you're using to be able to fish in a fast, aggressive manner. It's all about being delicate. So the floats emphasize all of that. Always about heavy. And today here we're at Cooper's Lake. It's quite deep, even though we're in probably the shallowest bit here where we are. So it's about using big, decent, positive floats. And what I've gone with today for me soft pellet rigs, yeah, I like the Finesse Carbons. They're really delicate, pretty much the most sensitive float that we do, in that they have a 1.5mm hollow bristle. That's what the emphasis is on. The weight of the float, yeah, I want a load of weight so I can have a load of lead down the bottom. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the bristles are everything when it comes to pellet fishing. Yeah, it's the number one mistake I see people doing when it comes to pellet fishing is not having their bait almost registering. I say almost because it's nigh on impossible to get expand the pellets to do that, but there's ways of fixing it. That is the most imperative thing when it comes to pellet fishing, is getting knowing that your trap set, knowing that it's all a tight line, and there's almost a tight line, or there's no slack in between your bristle and your hook bait. Yeah, there's always going to be an indication whenever your hook bait is moved. That is the trickiest thing, because I suppose that's the the biggest issue with pellets, is that for fish like skimmers, for F1s, they are so quick sucking them and ejecting them, not eating your bait, just because they know something's wrong, that it makes fish actually harder to catch on them. Even though they want to eat them, they know something's wrong really quickly. So in today's case, I've got a big old float on. Yeah, I've got a 0.75, takes a load of lead. It means I'm going to be nice and accurate. I'm going to keep it right over my trap. I'll talk about lines in that in a minute. And the shot in of which is really, really, really positive. So I've got probably 7 foot there, 7.5 foot. All of my shot in is in the bottom 2.5 foot. I know exactly what it's in. It's in the bottom 22 inches with the markers on my pole. So I've got a lot of lead down the bottom end, and it's all big, it's all nasty. Yeah, there's nothing to create a nice fall of my bait. I don't want that. I can create that by lowering it in nice. Yeah, I want my rig to just get down and stay nice and still. That is the most important thing. So you can see that with a 0.75, I literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 number 8s as my main shot, and then the bottom 2 are number 9s. Still really, really, really positive. You've heard me talk about this before. I need to keep things tight, and I need to see that bite as quick as it happens. So by having my number 9 on top of my hook length there, I can see a bite as soon as it happens. I have got no qualms whatsoever when it comes to fishing soft pellets, particularly for skimmers more than anything, in taking that number 9 off, putting it on my hook length. It doesn't bother me one bit. I'd rather get a bite. Yeah, there's the big taboo about putting your shot on the hook length, saying it's a bit bad angle in practice sort of thing. I want to see a bite. I mean, yes, I could put a 3-inch hook length on, a shorter hook length, but I don't like those knots being too close to the hook. It makes your bait look a little bit, just a bit unnatural, I suppose, when it comes to harder weather, when it's trickier to get a bite. So as I say, I've got no qualms whatsoever in taking that last number 9 off, putting it on my hook length to show the bite up if possible. It's all about keeping this last little bit tight so then bites show up, which, incidentally, the hook comes into it as well. So for today, I've got a decent hook on, and I'm always gearing these days, whenever I'm fishing soft pellets on the hook, in using decent size hooks on the bottom end. I don't want anything less than a 16. Yeah, there's no need to. Unless you're fishing a 1mm expander pellet, there's no need to have little tiny hooks. I want a hook with a bit of weight. So I want a bit about the hook to try and anchor that bait to the bottom. Yeah, me expander pellets, borderline neutral buoyancy in most cases. I want the hook to keep it where I want it. So I'm happily, if it was a little bit better, I'd happily use one of the X1s, which has got a little bit more weight to it than that. Instead, today, I've stepped down a little bit lighter, and we've gone to the F1E X2 versions, they're a little bit lighter, just because I think it's going to be a bit tricky today. I've swapped to them. But if it was better, and it may happen really, really quick, I'd be happier to swap to an X1 just for the added weight. I mean, your hook's buried in your bait anyway. You do not have to worry about it. Lines and all that, I go a little bit more delicate on this. That yes, we're at that time of year, October, we could be catching a few carp on it. But I want my rig to be really nice. I want it to fish nice, because I've got a delicate bristle on, a 1.5. If I were to use an 0.18, a really positive main line, it's just going to get affected a little bit more. It doesn't fish quite as nice. So a big tip would be for when you're using those nice little delicate bristles, 1.5 and less, then you want to be swapping just to that finer main line at this time of year, 0.16, maybe even 0.14. In today's case, I've got 0.16 on. I wouldn't be too upset to use 0.14. I'm still perfectly happy that I can land everything. It's not going to pull as hard. I'm not fishing for 20 carp. It might just be 1 or 2, but dropping down that main line makes a massive, massive difference. Other than that, as I say, really, really simple. Today's case, I've gone 0.16. I've got an 0.12 hook length. I can. I mean, they're still not too delicate yet. I'd happily put 0.1 on, though, if I needed to. And the elastic for today, that, again, is not irrelevant, but needs to be suited to wherever you're fishing. But the components that I'm using match perfectly to our red stuff. I mean, 1.6mm slick, that does the job for catching a bit of everything. That is the emphasis. Again, I'm saying the word emphasis a lot today, but that is what I'm on about, is at first, I want to catch anything. I may catch a 10-ounce roach, I might catch a 2-pound skimmer, I might catch a 15-pound carp. I want a rig that can do it all to begin with, before I go selective and I beef things up with my hard pellet rig, which we'll go on to later. So, components sorted, it really is that simple, but thinking a little bit more about them heavy shots to make sure they're doing what you want it to be doing, showing your bites up, keeping it still, plays a massive part. So I'm going to whiz plummet on and get some bait in, and then hopefully catch a quick fish on this one. So on the box, get to do the good bit, and before I put any bait in, I want to just go through plumbing up a bit quick, because it is important to get it right. I mean, we go through things like this a lot and assume it's simplistic, but it's got to be done in the right way, depending what we're fishing on. So today, if I haven't mentioned already, we are at the beautiful Cooper's Lake in Derby, which is a standard and open water, fairly deep venue, but it means that it's nice and flat, or pretty flat as well. So it's about targeting one line this. Obviously, if I want to do a pellets on a F1E type Snake Lake venue, then things would be very different. But today, it's all about open water world. So I'm just going to literally pick one line to do everything today. One line at 13 metres on my dolly boat, and I've already plumbed it up, and I just want to show you lot, if that's nice and in camera, going right to the end of my dolly boat, which is where I'm going to fish. I'm nice, and I'm just at the bottom of the body of my float. Yeah, if I pop that about a bit, you see it doesn't change too much. It's gone a bit awkward, the light there, but hopefully you lot can still see it. And it is still right at the body of my float. None of this plumbing to the tip of my bristle. I'd be absolutely wasting my time if I was doing that. I wouldn't be fishing on bottom even. But by giving myself that little bit of slack line, let me just have a little dunk about a bit. So coming a bit shorter, it stays pretty much the same. Go over there. So it's pretty much the same wherever I drop it. But I've got that, let's say 2 inch nearly. If you have a look from the top of your body of your float, let's just get that down there. Top of the bristle of my float to bottom body, probably 2 inches of slack, because my float's going to be as low as it possibly can be. I'm looking at the wrong camera then. As low as it possibly can be, I want that bristle. So that little bit there, where I've got it plumbed up to, gives me that much allowance for the curve sort of in my rig to happen, which my good mate will be taking the mick out of now quite a lot. So he's all set, ready, good to go. So where's our plummets off? So that was a 20 gram plummet that. I use a 20 gram for everything. Let's keep things really, really simple. Where's him off? So initial feed. So the first step, as I say, is all about micro pellets, soft pellets, things that are going to get me a bite quick. Yeah, and in the winter, I wouldn't even get the big pot out. I'd go straight in with the littlest, tiniest, most insignificant amount of bait you can imagine, and I'd be fairly happy fishing over it. But now it's still a bit better. We're still catching a few fish, so I want to put a little bit of an initial feed in, but where I put it in and how I put it in is really important. So all I'm going to put in, literally a pinch, like a big full cad pot's worth sort of thing, or our medium cup's worth of micros are going to go in there. Just a few more. So it's a lot of individual pellets out. It's probably a couple of 100 pellets going in there, but absolutely nothing. If you ball it up, you can see it's absolutely nothing what's going in. One really, really small ball of micro pellets, but I want them to go in loose. Yeah, in this case, I'm going to feed them loose, but that's going to be for a reason. And you may have seen as well, very unusually, but something I'm really dependent on these days in open water, I've got my pole support in front of me as well. It all matters when I'm being patient and trying to keep things still. So I'm going to actually fish with my pole in the pole support. And because of that, that's going to dictate where my bait's going to go. So with this, when it's in my pole support, it's going to be all the way out there. It's going to be at the end of my pole, pretty much sat like that. I don't want to fish within my main area of bait, even with micro pellets in this case. So I'm going to ship back probably ½ a metre, so I'm right on my join. And there, I'm going to slowly spread my micro pellets around there. Yeah, so they go in a nice little area. They're going to probably end up in about a foot square, just short where my main bait's going to be. Or my rig, sorry, is going to be. That's going to be my main feed area there. And by doing so, I'm stacking all the odds in my favour of a fish getting to my bait first, because it's going to be on the back edge of my feed. So bait in, rig ready. To begin with, I'm going to put a plain, boring expander pellet on the hook, which are great, I mean, mega popular. But I've spoken about it before, things can be done better. So just make sure they all sink, pick one out, and he's good to go on. Impale that on a 16, all nice. And again, this time I'm going to feed again, even though I'm going straight in, just with a little pinch of micro pellets. Little tiny pinch of micro pellets, and this is going to be at the back edge of it all. So all these little 1% things are stacking the odds in my favour of getting bites quickly and fish coming to my bait as fast as possible, resulting in a fish in my net. I've got to play dodge the leaf time in it. As we get out there, as I say, I've got that bait in my pot ready to go. So I'm going to flick my rig right out so it's right past my bait. Get him in pole support all nice without spilling too many of them micro pellets. And then just those little few that I've got, I don't mind sprinkling them around my float once it's in. Yeah, and it gives me, there's almost not a target area there. There's just a bit of a little bit of a spread of pellets around me bait, but nothing significant. Is that bite straight away? I don't think it was. The light's just gone a little bit funny. So now get me pole in that pole support. What I've got a back shot right in between me pole and the float, right in the middle. And because I've got that in the support and it's just sat there lovely, I've got that right angle occurring, it keeps everything as still as it could possibly be. Yeah, I can't keep that bait any more still. I can't hold it better than that. If I were to hold my pole, I'd be a bit wobblier and I'd go with the toe a little bit as well. I'd be moving with that. I don't want that to happen. A little indication there. And by having it in the bump bar, if this wind allows me to, because the wind's definitely making it hard to see a little bit, I can keep that absolutely perfect where I want it. Also to maintain that, I've only got a fairly short line in between my float and my pole. So I'll probably want about 12 inch, seems to be about the optimum length, just in case the wind gets up. And it just means I can keep things, it's not gonna come in, it's not gonna ride around, I can keep things exactly where I want them to be. All I need now is that ripple to stop, because that wasn't there when I set up, and it is now. But what I do want to talk about is how low that float's dotted. Hopefully you're picking it up on the camera now. You literally, when it comes to fishing with expanders on the hook, you cannot have your float low enough. Yeah, you need every little thing in your armoury that I've already talked about when I'm talking about the components of the rig and showing them biked up with the shot close. The lower I can have that float, yeah, we're getting away with it now that the ripple's dying, the better chance I've got of seeing a bite. Yeah, if I don't have that float dotted to beyond belief at this time of year, I'm going to miss out on a percentage without a doubt. It's frightening the size and the amount of fish that only just dip on that float, a little dip, you lift up and there's a great big 3-pound bream on quite often. It's frightening how little they move around your peg, which again, because of the way we fed, that sort of thing's going to occur. They're not whizzing all over my peg. The nature of the bait itself, in the way that you fed it, means that the fish are very, very localised. They're not skipping all over the place for loose feed. They're all within a foot or two area. So now I'm going to sit nice and patient and hopefully we'll get a bite. Yeah, we got a bite then. Fish straight in on my peg. As I say, fishing pellets, but still there's a fish straight in on it, which is lovely. Nothing massive. If I'd have gone in on hard pellets, I'd have caught nothing, but it's something. He's a little hybrid, which I'll take. That versatility word that I'm on about in catching just anything to begin with, that is what it's all about. Right, putting something in my net early on in this session, in the autumn now, when it's harder, colder overnight, that's the way I want to begin things, with just a bite, but still off a fish that is worth catching, as opposed to if I fish maggots, I'd probably catch a little perch or a little tiny roach. Same again, not many, probably about 30 micro pellets in there. Just stick them in the corner of my cup, just to give them a chance of staying in, and literally repeat the process. This is the downfall for me of soft pellets, is that its inability to attack things and attract fish with noise. Oh, I've caught a blooming leaf. I'm going to put my bait in just so I'm not messing him about. Let me put that bait in right at the end where I'm going to fish. I don't mind, by the time I get back out there, that'll spread nice. Quick, that is autumn fishing summed up right there, innit? Leaf at chuck. I thought I was being good dodging them. Right, get back on that bait quick. That bait will have just had time now to be getting somewhere near the bottom. Flick that rig out again. So I'm not lowering the bait in myself, so I'm letting it all happen. So what I'll do, I'll just whiz that bait in here now. Just hold me float off the water. But I want to put it in just before it's completely vertical. Yeah, so I don't want to be lowering my float in. I want that pellet to still come round, sort of at a bit of an angle, because that way it creates that arc I'm on about, and it falls on a tight line. Yeah, if I lower it down vertically myself, it creates a slight slack line in between the last shot and the bait. I don't want that. I almost want it to settle on the bottom, just away from my shot slightly, just to, again, try and keep that slightly tighter line than I would if I were to drop it in. So I'll sit there, same again, just repeat this. And literally it's a case of carrying on until the peg slowly changes itself. Yeah, don't be in a rush to make something happen. The last thing I want to do is get my catty out, start blasting bait all over it. It's not going to be time for that yet. This time of year, you have to sit back and wait. Yeah, just be really patient and let that slow build up of bait attract the fish in. I mean, they'll tell you when they want to feed, when more and more things start happening. And when they do, or when we start hooking some different fish that are a bit more inclined to eat a bit more bait, that's the time I can start swapping to hard pellets, start loose feeding, start being a little bit more aggressive, make something happen. But for now, I'm just going to spend a little while just doing this and just catch them. Not big fish, but almost bonus fish that I wouldn't be catching if I were to go straight in with a load of big, angry, fish-filling 6mm pellets. So let's just sit here and see what goes on. So I've got one little trick up my sleeve in a minute, just to present this bait a little bit better, but let's just have this one cast first, see if I can nail something, and then I'll show you one of my key edges when it comes to pellet fishing. Right, so I've just gone 10 minutes without catching one. I've had some indications, but I ain't caught one. But what has happened, the wind's popped up, and it's also teased me up to that little tip I was on about, in that what I feel's going wrong, in that my bait is moving around my peg. Yeah, even though it's on a bar, I'm keeping it still as I can. The wind's just catching that, and because the expander pellet has, well, zero anchorage properties, there's no weight in it whatsoever. Instead, I want to swap to a different pellet. I want to swap to a soft pellet. Yeah, a little thing I was put onto years and years and years ago by Paul Holland, I think it was. And that was using soft pellets, as in 4mm that have been softened up. The added advantage of using them, yes, they can be a little bit fragile when you put them on the hook, but the advantage of their anchorage, sinking quickly, staying where you want them to be, is absolutely massive. And after all, half the time it's what we're feeding. Yeah, we never feed expander pellets. We always feed 4s, micro 6s, whatever else, which eventually becomes soft pellets on the bottom. So by swapping to this, what I've done, I'm still just going to feed my pot, but swapping to this, what it's going to give me is more anchorage. So my rig's just going to be almost not noticeable to me, but I definitely believe it's far more static, far more anchored over my bait. And again, just another one of them little 1% things that mean my hook bait, if it's still flipping on, I think it's on, yes. My hook bait is staying where I want it to be, which is absolutely massive when I'm feeding such a small amount in such a big volume of water. So get that bait in, swing it in, and hopefully now, probably get away with it. The wind will probably drop now and it won't make a difference, but no, I'm sure it will. You can see my float's just sat that fraction of a little bit lower because everything's that little bit tighter in the water. Yeah, it's got a bit more weight to the bottom end, and in turn it almost shows up on the float, but it ain't gonna move. As long as I position my pole in the right, yeah, look how, hey, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Literally, as soon as I swap to that, it anchors it where I want it to be, I get a bite. That's, I hate fish, they're far too clever. But a beautiful, perfect example of those 1% little things potentially making a difference. It might not have, I might be talking rubbish, and I may have caught that if I put an expander on, but it's a bit of a coincidence. I've just sat down there for 10 minutes, not had a bite, swapped to one of them, and it's instantly, I've got a bonus fish in my net, and I'm away. I mean, within 50 minutes of fishing, my peg is starting to evolve different fish, say proper fish, proper beautiful bream, are starting to come into my peg, and it's sort of the first step I want this year. Quality silver's coming into my peg before hopefully I catch carp later on. So I think pretty much for now, I'm going to carry on fishing for a little bit longer. I'm going to stick with me lovely softened 4mm, see if I can catch a few more of them, and then I'm going to tune back in with you lot and make the change to hard pellets when my peg develops a little bit more, and hopefully a few carp start feeding. So it's been 20 minutes, I'm going to say. It's all very, very rushed for the sake of the video, and the peg's getting better. I mean, I've had 3 or 4 skimmers, I've had a decent, it's getting good, but the signs of different fish in my peg. So for the sake of this, I'm going to rush things on, and what I want to do next is swap it to hard pellets. I mean, just something that lets me be aggressive. Whether I would or not just now, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's probably an hour away from doing that, but I'm not staying here till 10 o'clock at night. We need to get this done. So next, I'm going to move on to my hard pellets, and I'm going to skip the riggy bit. I'm going to save that for the end for you, because the rig is quite a bit different to that that's used on the soft pellet. The components are just a little bit more positive and a little bit more fully through the water, but we'll talk about that later. So literally, this is going to be the initial swap. I've fed no hard pellets as yet into my peg. I'm literally just going to start introducing them now. I'm just going to put half a dozen in my cup, and I'm going to still, for a couple of casts, feed me micro pellets just to keep things going. And the hard pellets I've gone with in this case, because I'm very lucky here at Cooper's, I can use literally whatever I want, and I've gone with some skretting style ones, yeah, to begin with. I probably will stick with them, to be fair, till the end, but I'm going to start with some skretting style ones because of those bream that I've been catching. Yeah, if I wasn't catching any skimmers whatsoever, and I was just hooking small carp or F1s, whatever else, then I'd use normal Sonia Baits hard pellets, the Coppin style ones. But because I'm catching these breams and skim bobs, let me get that bait in just before I put it in my bar. Nice, so that bit of bait goes on there. But I'm going to be far more aggressive now. I want to make something happen. Yeah, it's not just about that little tiny pile anymore. That's a lovely way of ticking over, but it's boring, and if I'm honest, you ain't going to win. You're always going to fall behind. Is that gone already? Flipping heck. I think that might have gone already then, or either that or my float's overshotted. Let's put him in and have a look. So get rig in. Seeing an odd decent fish as well. That was one out there. There's been an odd better fish moving about, but immediately I'm gonna get my catty out, yeah, because I'm not going to feed where I'm fishing. Yeah, the worst possible thing I can do and straight away is put a load of bait on top of my rig. Yeah, it makes it nigh on impossible for them to find it with how few fish are in my peg. So what I want to do is slowly build my peg just by feeding some bait, nearly a metre short. I mean, that was probably a metre short. I want to go a little bit closer. That is the perfect area I want to be ringing the dinner bell. Not with many, just with like half a dozen, twice maybe. I mean, lay it in, feed it twice, sit there for a couple of minutes, see what happens. In another 2 or 3 minutes time, give it a ring that dinner bell, keep stuff going in, but not when I'm fishing. Yeah, if I try and fish right over the top of those pellets straight away, I spoke about this again, I keep saying it over and over again, it's like needle in a haystack. Yeah, they're never going to find my bait. Here we go. Oh, I missed that one. That's me gabbing. That was a proper bite. Yeah, they're never going to find my bait at first when there's a load of pellets on the bottom. I need to gather fish into me peg by making that noise. Is that nice? Beautiful. Yeah, gather fish into me peg by making that noise, having those baits falling through the water. That's going to get more and more fish into me swim, not letting anything go to where my float is. Yeah, my bait and that little pile is always the back of the bunch. So it's where the fish are going to sneak into me peg. I'm just going to sit there now, say keep ringing that dinner bell every couple of minutes. and be aggressive, push my peg at the right time. So whether I'm there or not, probably not quite in this case. I'd have probably waited another hour. But we're getting there. We're later in the day. I'm sort of at what? I think it's about 2 o'clock. Yeah, we're on 20 to 2. So definitely if we were fishing a match or a normal session, big bubble just came up then in my peg. Now I'd be really happy that there's a chance of pushing that on. Then bigger fish are going to start feeding. And my peg should have potential of getting really, really good. So I'm going to keep on putting that bait in all the time. I want to see some bubbles start coming up ideally. I want to start seeing an odd fizz. Is that gone? No. Hit me float with a pellet then, I think. Well, that bait's, I mean, it's not vast amount of bait. I'm not feeding thousands and thousands of pellets, but I'm feeding enough to make something happen. Give myself the chance of catching that winning weight by drawing the fish into my peg at the right time. Yeah, when they're feeding. That is the key thing at this time of year. Once it starts getting a bit chilly, you have those two distinct windows of the match that when you first start, it's often borderline rock bottom because they've had them cold nights, they're just getting used to it. They're often not feeding early on in a session, but just as it has been today, once we get to later on, everything really warms up, the lake becomes far more active, then fish feed far better. And then just by switching the way I'm feeding, slightly tweaking my bait, just to something a little bit more selective, a little bit more likely to be eaten by the intended quarry, being big skimmers and, well, hopefully carp in this case. Keeping that bait going in all the time. Just half a dozen, 2, 3, 4, 5 pellets. There we go, see that weird indication on my float then, lifting right up? That's something coming into me peg. That noise is drawing fish into me swim. And that's what I want to do, just keep it going in. It's not going to be a instant reaction. I'm not going to catch one within 30 seconds of doing it. It's about building it up and letting it happen. As I said, today's case for the video, I have very much tried to rush things, and I've done it before. I've actually even hooked a carp in my peg, which I didn't want to do, but I reckon now we've got things going. We're seeing an odd indication. I've seen a few carp about my peg, just not on the bottom yet. I'll be amazed if we don't hook a carp or a proper bonus fish, a big skimmer or a tench, very, very shortly by doing this. I'd say I've been thinking about it. I'm feeding the right type of pellets to give myself the chance of getting a bite. So the only other tweak that I've sort of got left in my armoury is swapping about with my hook bait. That can without doubt make a big difference, even when I'm just putting, I can't quite see that then with that wind. Even with a hard pellet on the hook and I'm just feeding hard pellets, it amazes me how often swapping a shade of hook bait or just a different type of hook bait, the roaches out there on the drop then, can make an absolutely massive difference. But I want to save it all. I don't want to employ all my little things at once, because then you don't gain an understanding of exactly what's happening and you lose a chance of that impact bait. Oh, so after what was probably 15 minutes, I'm going to say, we started to get some signs, started to get some single bubbles over me bait, weirdly, over where I was feeding. And then just by being patient, oh, he's pulling really, really hard, and I've only got 0.13 on. We did have one, but at least it was a sign. One's coming peg. I felt I was in the mouth then, but we got everything back, so I don't think it actually was. Maybe we just foul up the first one that came in the peg. But anyway, back in, repeat that. And things are slowly starting to happen. In fact, what I'm going to do, I've sat there for a while and not picked one out. I've fed a bit of bait now. So I am going to go in my little bag of tricks and just reiterate even more about my little all sorts of different pellets that we have that may pick a fish out. Either me pasty ones that I talk about a lot, they're what we're going to put on now because they're my favourite. But there's so many other options. I mean, yeah, just as a standout hook bait, just to pick a fish out. You might want a red one. I mean, there's so many options, and it all makes them little 1% differences in picking a fish out. So for this one, I'm going to put out one of our little pasty ones on, because we like them a lot. Ping a pasty one on, and hopefully, just going to put a few more pellets at the back, just half a dozen 4 mils, a little pinch of micros, nowhere near as many micros now, because I'm starting to feel that different fish are coming into my peg. That's the first carp I've hooked then. I did think it was in the mouth, but maybe not. It pulled out a bit too easy for my liking to be in the mouth. I up the leaf, no. Get away with it. Things are definitely kicking off and starting to happen now, which is getting me excited. Just lean forward, put that bait in. At least I'll flick that rig in again. So this rig's a little bit lighter, that I'll show you in a minute. So I do want to put this in a bit quicker. I don't want to hold this rig out. I want to put my float in and sort of hold on tight to it as it goes down while still watching it to see if I get an indication. Because the shot-in's a little bit nicer on this one, a bit more geared towards an indication there. A nice little fall of the bait because I'm loose feeding. Yeah, you need to think about how your bait's getting introduced into your peg and what impact that's going to have on the fish. I mean, no longer are they all really grouped up in a super tight area with just one or two on my peg. Now, because I've incorporated loose feeding into my feeding, there's many little morsels falling through that water quite regularly, which in turn draws more fish and potentially means I can catch some on the drop. They're going to be watching it a little bit more because they're hearing lots of noise and they're seeing lots of these pellets fall through the water column past them once they're there. And I think on a lake like this, particularly open water venues with a bit of depth, because I've got, as I say, nearly 7 foot there, while the water is still quite warm like it is now, they are inclined to not want to be on the bottom. So that loose feed should either mean I catch a few on a drop, or it'll help pull a few fish down that don't want to go down there because they don't realise my little pile's there. So I'm going to be nice and patient now. Just try and catch one more on this for you lot. Hopefully a nice quality fish. And then once we do that, I want to have a quick little run through of this rig. As I said, it's a little bit different to how I want to fish soft pellets. Just to explain them little things that I really do mean make such a big difference. Just need these fish to be willing. So let's keep ringing the dinner bell. Let's see if we get one. Here we go. Eventually it's gone. Not a great big carp like we wanted. Back on these skimmers, but we're weaning them onto pellets now, and even though I'm being really aggressive, putting loads of bait in, we've managed to switch them onto something I can be a little bit more aggressive with, as I keep saying, and hopefully catch a few more fish as a result. I mean, yes, I'd have probably caught that doing the same thing, and you could even argue that I could fish hard pellets to begin with, but it's not about that. It's about stacking the odds in my favour of having a good start. I mean, fishing at I'm going to say neutral bait of micros and expanders to begin with at this time of year just gives me the window of having somewhere to go, instead of just putting all my eggs in one basket, committing to feeding a more selective bait and potentially not catching. Hopefully that's demonstrated lovely exactly how we need it to be to make sure we're making the best out of a peg when we're fishing pellets. So quickly, I want to run through this rig just to show you the little differences when it comes to fishing the hard pellets with the pole rig, yeah. So just before we end, I do want to go through the component sort of thing of, is that the right one? Of my hard pellet rig, because say the little things, I keep iterating, do make a difference. And for this one, everything's swapped and beefed up a tiny little bit. Obviously I'm targeting big fish. I want to match it to the size of fish and the amount of fish I'm catching. So it differs from venue to venue, but today's case, I've got 016 to 014 on. Still that 016 just to make me float fish nice, which I believe makes a big difference. But speaking of floats, I've stepped things up just a little bit, because what I can do with a hard pellet, because it's got a bit of weight to it, I can get it to register on my bristle that bit easier. I mean, I'd rather use decent floats all the time, decent bristle floats. In this case, a steady slim carbon with a 1.8mm bristle, as opposed to the 1.5 on the other one, just because I can see it. I'm getting old, you know what I mean? I need that every bit of help I can get, and a 1.8 just stands out so much better, particularly just as today's case, when that lighter bit, it's just a bit pongy. This time of year it goes a bit tricky. So yeah, swap into that. I can still make my pellet register on my bristle because it's only a 1.8. Job's a good one. So just by beefing things up to the slim carbon instead of the finesse carbon, just does the job for me. Then bottom end, a bit different on this one. As I was talking about while I was fishing, there's a little bit of that nice fall element required. Because I'm loose feeding, I could catch 2 or 3 fish by dropping my rig in and they could take it on the settle. That is not going to happen on my other one, so I don't need to worry about that. With this, I may as well. And again, because I've got that added element of a bit of weight to my bait, I can go a little bit lighter. So in this case, with a 0.75 float, which I've got on 7 foot, I've literally got 1, 2, 3, 4 number 10s, sort of as me bottom droppers, but they're spread out quite a bit in the bottom sort of 16, 18 inches. I know that because of my markers. 16 inches, that's where my 10s are, all lovely. And then I have a tapered bulk just above that of number 9s. Yeah, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 number 9s above that in the bottom 30 inches. So spread out a little bit more, but it's that bottom end, the emphasis on the bottom end in that nice last little 1.5 foot, nearly 2 foot. I'm getting a bit of a nice fall. It just makes that, again, I keep saying it, that 1% difference that might catch me 1 or 2 more fish, which is 1 or 2 more fish more than the next bloke that's fishing a more positive rig. So components on that, as I said, we've swapped to 016 down to an 014 hook length. I still need something a bit pokey. So today I've got our orange slick in, the 1.8mm, and hook-wise, I've got an X5 on. I'm still in between on the two. Yeah, I either want the Carp riggers or the F1 riggers. I'm swapping between the two a little bit because they're still pulling. But for today, I've just gone with the X5. You know what I mean? The lighter version, my favourite hook in the world. This is actually my best hook for 4mm pellets. It's like my tunnel barn hook. When I'm fishing hard pellets for F1s, this is my favourite hook in the world. But there's something about it, this time of year, I can use it for an odd big carp, some skimmers, some F1s. It's a nice, versatile, really light, because I still want this to be a bit lighter so it sinks nice, but really, really, really strong hook as well that isn't going to let me down. And that's pretty much it. I mean, they are pretty much all of my pellet-based tips for this time of the year. It's all about thinking about what you're doing, thinking how your feed's reacting, but above all else, keeping things safe, versatile, so you're going to get as many bites as possible off as many fish without committing to feeding a load of bait and spoiling your peg. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Feel free to click the like and subscribe button, and you'll be notified for all the videos that myself and the Matrix consultants make in the future. And other than that, I'll see you all soon. Thank you very, very much for watching.